The girl froze, totally stunned by the portraits of all these ridiculously handsome guys. Just like she asked, they'd gathered up pictures of every hot nobleman in the whole empire for her. They were all so gorgeous, her eyes were darting around like crazy. But as soon as the excitement wore off, she was hit with a wave of disappointment. She slumped and reminded them that she'd asked for the best asterisk of the best. The maid said that there were just too many blue-eyed hotties to choose from. She was about to say there was no end to them, but the lady already fainted and hit the floor. The girl was bummed, not knowing how she'd ever find the main guy in this sea of dudes. The maid felt genuinely sorry for her sad mistress. She helped her onto the couch before she could completely pass out. The lady gripped her dress, deciding she needed to focus. She gazed ahead thoughtfully, like she was asking someone for advice. She had to find the main character in 10 days, no matter what. She still didn't know who he'd be, but that was the whole point of her being here. Darlene Este was the Count's sickly daughter, always fainting from some chronic illness. She'd possessed the body of a character from a novel, and she didn't even know what role it was. Not long before this, she'd managed to plow through over 1,000 books. She never cared about genre, just devoured everything she could get her hands on. Over that time, she developed more than 5 favorite male leads. A month ago, she was hunting for a new masterpiece until dawn and fell asleep as the sun came up. The second she blinked awake, she was staring at some palace she'd never seen before. Strange people, straight out of a movie, were lined up in front of her first thing in the morning. And to top it off, she was freaked out by how she looked, like a freaking princess. She should asterisk have passed out, but somehow she felt totally in control. Darlene was stoked to realize she'd hopped into someone else's body, just like in a novel. She figured she'd get the hang of it fast, but then she realized she didn't know squat. The girl started frantically racking her brain for different titles. Even with a year of reading under her belt, she was totally useless. It was enough to make her cry, not knowing a damn thing about the world she was in. Usually, the main characters instantly know where they are, but she was different. Darlene was freaking out because the body's owner had total amnesia. She tried to calm herself down, but still collapsed on the floor, totally shocked. From now on, she was forced to play by rules she didn't even know. That same evening, she passed out and woke up lying in bed. I guess she finally understood how fragile her character's health was. She was scared it would happen again, but she still decided to get out of bed. Darlene felt a wave of heat and overheard the maids talking. They were seriously worried about how her condition was getting worse and worse. They were blown away that she even had to ask the name of her own empire. Judging by what they said, it was obvious Darlene had no idea her illness was a death sentence. She decided to eavesdrop when they started talking about the Earl's decision. Everyone was buzzing about how she only had 2 years left because of her illness. That hit Darlene hard, because she just thought she was generally run down. Suddenly, she felt like a character with a freaking countdown clock ticking. No sooner did she think about it than a hologram popped up behind her. Some fairy greeted her, congratulating her on realizing her situation. She added that she was here to help her make the most of the time she had left. Darlene tried to get her name, but the fairy demanded she state her status. The girl repeated the line, and a loading window appeared on the screen. A window popped up in front of her, looking like a character rank summary. Darlene froze when they pointed out her health bar and told her she was about to kick the bucket. No sooner did she start thinking about it than she coughed up blood all over the floor. Her whole body started shaking with painful tremors, like she was in pure agony. The screen popped up, asking if she wanted her first assignment, the one she couldn't back out of. That same day, Rise Trisha, Darlene's friend, came to visit. She started asking, all worried, if Darlene was doing okay. To her surprise, the girl sitting in front of her looked perfectly healthy. Rise immediately said she didn't even know what was going on anymore. She rushed to hug her friend, so relieved that she looked healthy. Darlene smiled and was about to answer, but then she saw the hologram again. The fine print said she'd be toast if she botched her first mission. Just 3 days ago, she got the news. She was staring down a death sentence. Then, bam! A mission panel and a contract popped up right in front of her. She was so stunned she couldn't help herself and hit the accept button. Her main gig was fixing up a world made of books she'd read. The girl was floored by how blatantly the system was messing with her. This contract was a raw deal, but it was her only shot at survival. Her body was basically clinging to life by a thread, ready to kick the bucket any second. The system chimed in, saying she'd already be pushing up daisies if it wasn't for the fairy's precious spear. The fairy explained this wasn't some world inside a book thing like she thought. This is a world forged from the blending of 4 different novels. She said that right now, 4 separate universes are colliding. These stories got all mixed up because of a warp in time and space. This caused some serious glitches, since the tropes from each novel got scrambled too. So Darlene got stuck playing the obsessed guide to the universe. She had to make damn sure she didn't stray from the world's main storyline. Darlene was so stunned by this info, she froze solid. She blew a gasket, demanding the main character role instead of this whole mess. Before she could even finish, the fairy declared the key to solving everything was the main character. Darlene was shocked to find a slick smartwatch on her wrist. That was a one-of-a-kind alarm, going off right next to the main character. Darlene was pissed to find out the system wasn't going to listen to her. They also told her that every time she refused a mission, her stats would take a hit. They promised she could go home and get a wish if she saved the world. First thing she had to do was find a clue to the first novel. Darlene was losing it, being forced to find someone she knew absolutely nothing about. She knew there could be a ton of different storylines in the world of novels. That just made it even harder to nail down a specific characteristic. Then it hit her. In any novel, the main guy's gotta be a looker. That's exactly why she started collecting pictures of all the hotties. Once she had enough intel, she decided to grill Rize about each of them. She asked if any of them looked different in person than their pictures suggested. Rize immediately got flustered, struggling to answer that question. She started naming the guys one by one, mentioning which ones had been, shall we say, *enhanced* a little. Finally, she decided to ask why her friend was collecting all this data. Darlene confessed there used to be so many portraits in here, she could barely get in the room. She thought with relief about how she'd managed to weed out half of them. She couldn't help but wonder how some guys could be so damn good-looking and still be total jerks. Darlene didn't even know if she should consider that a blessing or a curse. She used to fall head over heels for every single main character, no exceptions. Even with all these options, she's got a type. It's a guy with a scornful, demanding look and a stone-cold personality? Now she's regretting not picking romances with the sweet guys before. Again, she couldn't figure out how she was going to handle this situation. She just happened to spot a portrait of a dude and turned to her friend. Like she was hypnotized, she walked up to the portrait and asked who he was. He had this look like he'd just as soon tear you apart if you said the wrong thing. Rize seemed pretty taken aback by her friend's admiration and apprehension. After a short pause, she said, all tense, that he was the Empire's second prince. Word is, he's got a real ruthless and unforgiving streak. Rize mentioned he's famous for looking like an angel. Darlene immediately looked surprised, like something clicked. Rize sadly figured the girl had even forgotten that. She decided to jog her friend's memory and went over to the portraits. One by one, she pointed out all the high-ranking figures in the Empire. Thanks to her experience, Darlene quickly picked out the potential male leads from each novel. She was blown away by the incredible lineup of guys. Rize looked down, feeling guilty, saying she didn't even realize how serious it was. She guessed Darlene's been having a really rough time lately. She said she didn't want to burden her anymore, considering how busy she is. Her words made Darlene think about what she'd been missing. She'd been so caught up in work, she hadn't paid attention to the people closest to her. Reese Trisha was her one and only irreplaceable friend. She came from a powerful family and had a top-notch education. And on top of that, she was a sweet and kind-hearted girl. When Darlene was sick, she never left her side. Darlene tried to smooth things over and suggested they take a walk together. Looks like Reese was surprised she was invited to the greenhouse of all places. Darlene said she'd heard the great mage's magic still lingered there. That's why rare flowers were still blooming. Darlene shyly admitted she hadn't visited before because she'd been feeling under the weather. Reese gave the girl a thoughtful look, bracing herself to break some bad news. She explained that only members of the royal family were allowed inside. They couldn't just visit whenever they wanted without getting permission first. Rize said it was totally fine because nobody appreciated the gesture more than she did. Darlene froze, feeling a system notification pop up behind her. The fairy added that she might get lucky if she checked out the conservatory. Like an angel, Rize asked her to come visit her again tomorrow. Darlene was dazzled by her radiance and immediately agreed. The next day, the weekend girl decided to take another stroll. The maids were surprised by how cheerful she was, even though she was sick. The loyal maid, Darlene, was thrilled that the young lady was taking steps toward recovery. She cared for Darlene like she was family. Meanwhile, the girl was racking her brain, trying to figure out where to find the main character. She knew she wasn't supposed to have any contact with any of them. Darlene didn't even know if she could find him, let alone talk to him. She needed to gather intel, and fast, because time was running out. She barely knew anything about him, except that he was a real piece of work. She was practically hanging on the gates when a guy suddenly appeared in front of her. She immediately met his angry glare and went sprawling on the floor. Darlene grumbled that he needed to watch himself. Her jaw dropped when she got a good look at his face. This guy was a dead ringer for the dude she'd been searching for. The man snapped, asking if that was how she talked to royalty. Darlene kept sprawled on the floor, realizing this was the guy from the portrait. She was even more shocked when the indicator on her arm lit up. That could only mean the main character was right next to her. She immediately wondered if she'd be able to pull off the mission. The fairy was quick to remind her what was at stake. She still didn't know jack about the first novel, so she needed to get some intel from the prince. Darlene froze, totally shocked, because she was only told to find a hero, plain and simple. She felt a surge of annoyance when the fairy claimed she never said anything like that. Reality hit Darlene hard when he called her out on her attitude. The girl was completely lost, not knowing what the heck she was supposed to do now. She knew freaking out wouldn't solve anything, so she quickly got back on her feet. She decided this was a golden opportunity to set things right. Darlene braced herself for the conversation and nervously clutched the hem of her dress. She gave a respectful bow and greeted him properly, just like the rulebook said. The girl smiled, betting that her experience would be her saving grace. She was sure she could impress him, since she'd dug up some dirt on him. Darlene wanted the ground to swallow her whole when he asked if she'd ever studied etiquette. She felt a wave of embarrassment when he straight up asked her age. He lowered his gaze and questioned if she even knew basic greetings. The guy said, sounding totally bummed, that the Count hadn't bothered to educate her. She figured there must be some misunderstanding making him think she was late. The prince wasn't hearing it and practically ordered her to head back home. He shut her down so fast, Darlene didn't even have time to think. She wasn't about to give up, so she immediately started tailing him. He knew she was right behind him, but he didn't say a word. Turns out, he'd been waiting a whole hour in the greenhouse. He was waiting for the Earl, who was supposed to escort him, but the guy was nowhere to be found. Instead, Darlene got mistaken for his escort, which was a total screw-up. That's how she ended up in this completely messed up situation. Her dad was a good guy, but he was a little out there, you know? The fairy said she needed to hurry, or she was gonna kick the bucket. Darlene knew she was running out of time, so she turned to the prince. She winked and asked what he was doing in a place like this. The dude just coldly replied that he was just there to look at the flowers. She bought it at first, but then she sensed something was seriously off. She stopped dead in her tracks and asked if he was planning on giving them to someone. Looks like her question totally threw him for a loop, made him stop dead in his tracks. He said, all icy, that he was gonna give them to his little sister. The prince paused for a sec, then said he wanted to get his sister a gift. He got all ticked off by the conductor's surprise, like it was out of nowhere. She smirked, like she'd figured out a little something about what makes him tick. He didn't talk to women, but he was crazy about his one and only sister. She was trying to guess the plot where he falls head over heels for the main girl. It's the same old song and dance in romance novels, totally predictable stuff. She kept a close eye on the prince, trying to decode the romance. Darlene froze when he said this place hadn't changed a bit. She turned around and noticed a butterfly fluttering by. Looks like she's just now decided to take in all the beauty of the greenhouse. She glanced ahead and saw the prince heading towards the gazebo. The girl was blown away by how magical this place was. She caught the man's stern look and remembered she was his guide. She clapped her hands and declared that all the lights in this place were enchanting. He coldly dismissed her obviousness and asked if she was trying his patience. Darlene got even angrier when the fairy told her to keep her chin up. The prince said this place would be beautiful even if the lights went out, and then they did. They were shocked that the magic lights had completely faded. He looked up, figuring something must have busted. The prince immediately thought the mages weren't pulling their weight. Darlene felt him waiting for her answer, but she was frozen solid. The prince stepped forward, saying a greenhouse without light could be trouble. She tried to figure out what he meant, but the prince stayed quiet. She froze, not even noticing the branch reaching for her. The next second, she was falling, like her legs were yanked out from under her. It all happened so fast, she didn't even have time to process it. As she fell, she dragged the prince down with her, and in a flash, he was underneath her. The second she touched his cheek, she jumped up, startled. She started making excuses, saying she totally didn't mean for it to happen. But the prince just reacted to the creature showing up and drew his sword. Darlene thought he was gonna punish her and started shaking even harder. She got so freaked out that she screamed loud enough to shatter glass. The girl tried to back away when she saw the stem snap. The prince calmly replied that the tree roots are alive and they move. Darlene confessed that this greenhouse belongs to her parents and she's never been here before. She tried to explain herself, saying she wasn't feeling too good. The prince seemed bummed and said the rumors were true after all. He pointed out that she was clueless and didn't know squat about her own family's legacy. He mentioned that 1,000 years ago, some serious magic was laid down in this greenhouse. That's why these weird and rare plants are growing here. On top of that, there are some dangerous species that need to be kept in check so they don't wake up. The girl just assumed, all innocent, that it was something like a houseplant. Darlene totally invaded his personal space and reached for his shoulder. She was trying to brush something weird off his shoulder, but he stopped her. The girl froze when she felt his hand on hers. She saw some strange stuff leaking green juice all over her hands. It was an avalid leaf, which can basically set your skin on fire, human or animal. The prince was blown away that she didn't even know something that basic. After a short silence, she asked if she almost lost her hand. She smiled sweetly and thanked the prince for saving her. He was surprised and proudly said that she helped him, not the other way around. Darlene started to say she didn't even know about it, but he cut her off. He sighed and confirmed that she really did save him from danger. She realized she had a golden opportunity when he asked what she wanted. The girl decided to fish for some new information with a question. She smiled and asked if he knew any really beautiful girls. That way, she hoped to find out if he'd met the main heroine. She got even more excited when he said that he did. The prince closed his eyes and said she was the most beautiful girl in the world. Darlene tried to pry the name out of him, but his answers were totally vague. Her patience was wearing thin as he kept talking in circles. Then, out of nowhere, he confessed he was talking about his sister. I'm guessing Darlene definitely wasn't expecting such a lame answer. She caught herself, realizing she might have been jumping to conclusions from the start. Darlene immediately pictured a romance that kicks off with the introduction of the main character's little sister. She couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, that's what this was. The girl figured he didn't necessarily have to be the main character, though. She thought maybe he was a side character, or the main dude's best friend. This is a coming-of-age story, so even the side characters could be main characters. That whole train of thought helped her reach a final conclusion. Looks like she's finally remembering the cover and title of the novel. The fairy instantly congratulated her for completing the quest and leveling up her health bar. She was rewarded with unlocked info about this world. It was a story about the main character being raised by her family. At first, she had mixed feelings about the novel, but the brother's loyalty was impressive. She finally realized that the tough second brother was standing right in front of her. Lycan Porvison seemed ruthless, but he was devoted to his sister. Darlene excitedly demanded to see his character stats. Turns out his favorability rating towards her was rock bottom. The fairy bummed her out, saying that's basically his like-o-meter for her. A high favorability score meant he was more likely to fall for the usual tropes. Darlene was thrown for a loop, totally clueless what to do with that info. She couldn't figure out what the heck was going on with these brothers. At first, he seemed like a guy who was really going through something, if you catch my drift. She decided to throw him a curveball and called out to him. The second she spoke, every single light in the greenhouse blazed on. The prince got all sarcastic when she asked what was up with that. She chuckled, then awkwardly suggested they continue the tour. The prince scoffed, unimpressed, and called her out for being too chill. As soon as he said that, his good opinion of her dropped even lower. She turned around when a familiar male voice called out to her. It was her worried dad, asking what she was doing here. Count Este broke out in a cold sweat, realizing how messed up things were. He freaked out the second he realized the prince was here too. The second prince didn't say a word, just gave him a stone-cold stare. Count Este knew he was in deep trouble, but decided to pull himself together. He bowed respectfully and recited some kind of strange incantation. It was like Count Este was bending the space around them to his will. Looks like even the prince himself noticed the changes around here in silence. Not even the earl's daughter could wrap her head around what just happened. She knew he'd said something, but she didn't catch a word of it. The memory of being judged for her manners flashed through her mind again. Lycan Porvison calmed down a bit and returned the man's greeting. But his greeting was nothing more than a trap. He got pissed and demanded to know what's up with his duties to maintain the greenhouses. The earl hung his head and begged forgiveness for everything that went down. He tried to defend his daughter, saying she was like a little fawn. The prince said there's no need to keep someone irresponsible around. The guy frowned when he mentioned he and the earl needed to discuss a problem. The girl didn't want to leave yet. She needed to double-check something. She started to speak, but the prince's icy tones shut her down. He looked down, then told her to show some respect next time she greets him. Right after that conversation, Darlene headed back into the house. The maid started apologizing for not telling her sooner. She was worried if something bad happened to her after meeting the second prince. Even so, Darlene was happy she'd completed her task. She decided to ask why the lights in the greenhouse kept randomly going out. Becky guessed the imperial family was late on fuel deliveries. Darlene figured it was all good, since it was the palace's problem. It hit her then. The prince was no pushover. He was arrogant and controlled enough to steamroll anyone. She couldn't help but wonder what the other guys were like. She knew she'd have to deal with 3 more dudes just like him down the road. Darlene decided it was time to start looking for the main girl. She pictured her as harmless as a hamster and radiant as a sunbeam. These thoughts only made her more determined to sort this out. That same day, she decided to meet with Reese to tell her something. Darlene was silent, but her whole vibe screamed determination. She thought Reese might be the main character, but everything pointed to the opposite. The girl remembered a crucial detail and decided to double-check it. She straight up asked what she knew about greeting the royal family. The girl immediately quoted the exact lines the count had said. Looks like Reese was thrown off by her friend's weird behavior. She was worried something might be up with the girl. Darlene scratched her head and told her about meeting the second prince. The story about him didn't surprise Reese, since she knew about his demands. She added that Darlene should always be careful around him. It was super tricky to pronounce the royal family's names in the language of the gods. Still, the dude was seriously gorgeous and had his perks. She also mentioned that when you bow and say a name in this language, only the person named can hear it. Darlene instantly remembered how she couldn't make out those words. It blew her mind so much her jaw just dropped. The girl turned to Rise and asked her to say the prince's name. Rise explained that you can't just go around carelessly throwing out the names of the royal family. Rise was sure she already knew that, but she didn't. She'd only taken over this body a couple of months ago. She vaguely remembered reading about this novel a long time ago, that's it. That's why she didn't know this info, which was revealed after coming of age. Rise said true names have sacred power, and you don't just forget them. She added that the Villainous family were saints, summoned to end the Continental War. Darlene vaguely remembered a situation involving the gods. The novel itself kicked off with the discovery of a daughter in the corner of the palace. This daughter could wield sacred power, granted by the gods themselves. So she quickly became the Empire's prized possession. The Emperor was a stone-cold tyrant, totally indifferent to his own kids. The kid was abused for a long time by the nannies and servants. This girl was unwanted and just trying to survive on her own. While doing that, she charmed her dad and brothers, which completely flipped the script on the novel. That was the only thing Darlene could remember. These thoughts helped her latch on to one interesting detail. She remembered how cold the second prince was supposed to be, but the way he acted yesterday said something different. All this pointed to him definitely breaking the mold. Right then, the fairy said she was proud of her quick thinking. She got pissed when the fairy suggested she go check it out herself. After that, the girl found herself at the start of a new quest. She headed to the study, ready to dig up some new intel. The girl froze, taking in the sheer number of different windows. She figured she dug up just about everything she could find. The real kicker was, she couldn't get her hands on the royal family's actual names. This whole extra skill thing with the ownership was messing with her head too. Becky burst into the room, saying it was time for her meds. Darlene said she was tapped out. She couldn't take any more pills. Becky started arguing that the doctor had prescribed that exact dosage. The girl knew it was pointless, since all she had left to do was boost her health points. She couldn't tell Becky that, so she just had to play along. Becky started crying, saying she'd never forgive herself if anything happened to her. Even though Darlene agreed to take it, Becky was still bummed out. She said that the lady hasn't even seen the doctor this whole time. The maid swore he's a great guy, helped her get back on her feet. That made Darlene suspicious, cause her health bar's practically empty. Even though she's knocking on death's door, this doctor promised she'd get better. The girl couldn't help but wonder if he was running some kind of scam. Some random dude just said she's old enough to know better than to refuse her medicine. He then asked why she's getting uglier every single day. It was Paulo Este, Darlene's pain-in-the-ass twin brother. She asked what he was doing home in the middle of the day, and if he got canned. He said it's all because of the royal ball next week. Looks like Darlene totally spaced on the whole thing with everything going on. She ran right up to her brother, yelling, asking when it was happening. He reminded her that she got an invite to the princess's birthday bash too. Her brother was against her going, said she wasn't up to it health-wise. Darlene immediately started arguing that she felt totally fine. She added that she wanted to do whatever she wanted while she still could. The girl knew her dad would cave fast if she started laying on the charm. That's why she was so sure she'd be going to the ball. After that, even Paulo had to give in, since there were only a couple of days left. Darlene confidently stated that she had plenty of time. Becky took off, saying she'd round up every tailor in the capital like pronto. The lady tried to refuse, but the maid was totally firm about it. Darlene just thought about how she could nail this quest. She glanced back at the screen, which said she needed to get acquainted with the princess. She was supposed to hit up the princess's birthday ball. She remembered her tyrant dad only threw it because his lackeys kept bugging him. Next thing you know, he's got to watch a bunch of jerks hitting on his daughter. That's what gets him to help the main character for the first time. This was supposed to be a major turning point, a real game changer. Darlene was still kind of freaked out that it was happening next week, but the system messages gave it all a seriously creepy vibe. That night, she had a dream about a dude on a battlefield. A knight came up to him, respectfully calling him emperor. The knight said he wouldn't be around to see all the great things he'd do. He looked around and saw the whole battlefield was covered in enemy corpses. The knight dropped to his knees, feeling his life slipping away. His last wish was for the emperor to remember him. The man shed a single tear and called himself his eternal knight. Darlene woke up, remembering that his name was Embernet. She froze in bed, trying to shake off the heavy dream. Time kept ticking, and the moment she had to go to the ball finally arrived. Her brother reminded her to cover her mouth when she yawned. She said she was totally beat, like she'd been up all night binging a movie. Paulo told her to come back if she got tired, but she wasn't having it. Darlene wasn't leaving that palace until her mission was done. He confessed he couldn't believe the day had come where he was seeing her off to a ball. Paulo gently squeezed his sister's hand and told her to be careful. After that, they went into the palace, where the aristocrats were already swirling around the dance floor. Darlene's eyes darted around, taking in all the beautiful couples. Their moves were perfectly polished, and they all wore smiles on their faces. The girl was blown away by how lavish everything looked. She finally felt like she'd stepped right into a romance novel. Paulo just kept on teasing his sister, nonstop. The girl thoughtfully admitted that she really loved this place. She never thought she'd actually get to come here. Looks like his sister's sudden confession shut Paulo right up. The second they took a step forward, she froze, completely stunned. She suddenly remembered that balls are often rife with drama. All sorts of clashes and scandals went down in places like this. Darlene thanked her lucky stars for ending up at an event like this. Paulo saw how stoked she was and decided to bring her back down to earth. He smirked and said they should probably greet the emperor first. The girl gave him a cold reply, saying she already knew all the rules. When he heard Rize was arriving soon, he immediately called it a godsend. He clapped her on the back and said he'd catch her later. Darlene rolled her eyes when he jokingly called her a weirdo. She hurried to hide when they announced the arrival of the second prince. Everyone immediately stared at him, buzzing about his angelic looks. His gaze was full of coldness and arrogance, but his beauty was captivating. Even so, Darlene knew his true colors and wasn't falling for it. Just thinking about when they first met gave her the creeps. She couldn't figure out why the main character was acting so detached. The girl awkwardly stayed put behind him, hiding behind her fan. She jumped when her bracelet started glowing like crazy. Darlene froze, surprised, waiting for the main character to show up. She thought it had something to do with the prince, who was standing way over there. It wasn't until later that she suddenly found a kid under the table. A familiar hair color instantly grabbed her attention. Darlene was shocked that the little princess was actually the heroine of this whole story. Looks like the princess already spotted her and is checking her out. Darlene tried to say hi to the girl, but she bolted faster than you could blink. It threw Darlene for a loop. She didn't even know what to make of it. The girl decided to chase after the little one, ASAP. She was booking it, full speed ahead, but still couldn't catch that kid. Her whole operation almost went south when she tripped over her own dress. She thought her goose was cooked, but some random dude saved the day. Darlene was even more shocked when her watch started going haywire. One look at this total hottie and she knew, this guy's the main character. He caught her like a gentleman and asked if she was all right. Meanwhile, Rize was already tearing it up, trying to find her friend. The girl was freaking out because Darlene was a no-show at their meeting spot. Meanwhile, she rushed to thank him for his help. This ridiculously handsome dude was just glad she was okay. Darlene felt a weird vibe from him, like she'd seen him before. She was totally thrown when some guy called him Duke. As soon as she heard that, it all clicked. She recoiled from him like he was radioactive. It finally hit her. He's one of those pretty boys from the portraits. All signs pointed to him being the main character from one of those novels. Their encounter messed with Darlene so much, she even forgot about the little girl. She didn't want to run, but she knew she couldn't let the princess slip away. She thanked the prince for keeping her out of the sickbay, thanks to him. The girl told him to consider it her due diligence and said her goodbyes. She smiled and, as a parting shot, told him he could add interest to that. The guy looked totally blindsided by her move and how fast she bolted. He watched her figure disappear into the distance, frozen in place. The Duke kept staring ahead until something clicked in his head. The man finally realized he didn't even get the stranger's name. Meanwhile, Darlene was already outside the palace walls. She'd been running so long and hard, she felt like she was about to pass out. She was stuck in the maze and suddenly realized she'd lost track of the kid. If Darlene had known this was gonna happen, she would have stuck with the Duke for sure. Too late now, though. She's gotta finish this quest. Looks like it's just hitting her now that she's totally lost. She knew anything could be lurking around here, ready to jump her. The girl was jumpy at every little noise like a cornered animal. She screamed when the princess gave her the evil eye and came charging. Darlene went after her, but the kid vanished into the bushes again. After a few minutes, she finally gave up and just collapsed on the ground, exhausted. The girl said, dead serious, that she wasn't going any further. This was it. Still, Darlene was already captivated by the fact that she looked like a doll. She openly admired the girl, as if she'd forgotten who she was dealing with. The princess asked if she'd take responsibility if her bones were to break. Darlene apologized, but the princess repeated the same phrase again. The system unexpectedly announced the end of the quest to get to know the princess. Darlene felt cheated, since she hadn't expected that kind of behavior from the main character. She was even more surprised when she saw that the girl's favor bordered on hatred. Even her villainous brother only had -7 points. Darlene guessed that the princess remembered her past life because of the world's distortions. In her past life, the princess was a real war hero. With that, she built a whole damn empire through war. That's exactly why she found her own body awkward and suffocating. On top of that, she was jonesing for a drink and missed smoking like crazy. Darlene had to fix all this messed up stuff that made the princess look like some old geezer. With every new detail, the mission seemed more and more impossible. Darlene still couldn't wrap her head around the fact that she was the emperor. The princess figured the girl in front of her had gone deaf and wasn't answering. Darlene heard the princess just fine, but she was still mulling over her options. Ultimately, she froze, totally clueless about what to do next. A new quest just popped up: turn the princess into the main character. Out of the blue, the fairy decided to give her a gift. A peek at how the royal family really felt about her. She was floored when she saw what they thought of the princess. Darlene noticed the scores on the chart were rock bottom. She had no clue how she managed to rack up such a terrible rating. What shocked her even more was that even the second prince had it out for her. That was messed up, 'cause he seemed totally different. That day, he came off as a caring, loving brother. The girl tried to chill out and quickly figure out what was going on. Making things worse, she didn't remember the details of the novel all that well. Still, she knew it was supposed to be all sunshine and rainbows. The main character was supposed to be swimming in everyone's affection. Looks like she figured out that the princess's barbaric behavior is the reason why that's not happening. Darlene realized she had to turn her back into the sweet princess she used to be. She tried to line up that perfect image with what she was seeing now. Looking at the princess acting like some grumpy old man, it seemed impossible. The system chimed in, saying that at high affection levels, random events would pop up, which basically meant that the main character would do whatever the princess asked. Making things even harder, the princess clearly didn't like her. Even now, she probably thinks Darlene's lost it, just standing there mumbling to herself. So the girl decided to play the sympathy card and said she actually was feeling sick. She flashed this super sweet smile and asked if she wanted to come back. The princess was thrown off. Like, why was she acting like they were old buddies? Darlene was clearly rattled that she was so sharp, especially since she was trying to get close. The princess pointed out that she used to be all formal and stuff. This total 180 seemed to short-circuit the kid. She just froze up. She figured Darlene was either crazy perceptive or a hired gun. The giveaway was that she knew the princess's identity before the big reveal. The girl totally lost it, screaming her head off and ignoring Darlene's excuses. She immediately scrambled to grab her magic pacifier. The princess held out her own pacifier, which suddenly morphed into a glowing sword. Darlene froze, totally freaked out by the rage burning in the princess's eyes. The system window confirmed it. This was seriously a magic sword. The girl knew she had to save her own hide and dropped to her knees. She begged for forgiveness for lying about not knowing who the princess was. The princess's face shifted when Darlene said she'd heard about her from the second prince. She smiled, saying his hair shimmered like water. Darlene added that the prince spoke highly of the princess. Looks like those words managed to calm the princess down a little. She looked down and said that guy was going to make her a target, eventually. Darlene went rigid, trying to process what she'd just heard. The princess freaked her out, saying she didn't come all this way just to ask how she was doing. Darlene sensed danger and tried to say it was all a big misunderstanding. She tried to talk things down, but the princess just kept coming at her. The girl screamed when the kid lunged at her with a weapon. Darlene was even more shocked when her eye blazed with a beam. She skillfully dodged the princess's strike, narrowly avoiding getting hit. The girl instinctively reached out, and then a sword just like hers appeared in her hand. The princess wasted no time and came at her again. Darlene froze from the sudden attack, losing her footing for a second. Still, she somehow managed to block every single one of the kid's blows. She'd never done martial arts before, so this whole thing felt totally unreal. She was blown away by how her body was just moving on its own. The system gave her props, said she'd leveled up her skill big time. It added that, from now on, the Ambernate Knight's soul and memories were hers. The next thing she knew, she was remembering that weird dream again. It clicked for her. That dream was actually memories from the past. The system asked if she wanted to hear the knight's tragic backstory. Before she could even answer, blood started gushing from her nose. Her health was tanking fast because of what she'd just done. It told her to chill out, but the princess was still standing right in front of her. The princess lowered her weapon and said Darlene wasn't just some average Joe. This whole thing felt totally insane to her. Even though she learned the princess's name, her health stats were tanking fast. She was about to collapse when some phantom dude caught her. She felt like that Embernet Knight was right there next to her. He had this noble look on his face, and his posture was perfect. Darlene was blown away that she was actually seeing him in the flesh. Before she knew it, cold tears just started streaming down her face. She didn't understand this weird feeling stabbing her in the heart. Suddenly, she felt just like she did in that dream, like it was happening all over again. For a split second, she felt like she was back on the battlefield. She remembered that in her past life, the princess was an emperor. This was a war hero who built an empire through conquest. Darlene decided these sudden flashbacks weren't just a coincidence. She was left with no choice but to try and gain her trust. She said she followed because of her ability to see past lives. Darlene lowered her head and said she was one of those who followed her. She dropped to one knee and called the princess a war hero. She called the princess the one and only emperor of Lotviken. The girl asked her to remember her loyal Embernet knight. Looks like she actually managed to pluck at the girl's heartstrings after all. You could see the determination written all over Darlene's face. Her voice suddenly got warmer when she heard the name Ambernay. The girl's face flushed red, and then she asked if it was really him. Right then and there, her favorability rating shot up. That score actually jumped by a whole 20%. Darlene got up off her knees and apologized for acting so weird. She was about to mention the memory lapses, but the princess suddenly rushed in for a hug. The woman could see how eagerly the girl was anticipating her loyal knight. She smiled and said that her name was Darlene Este now. She got a notification that the main character remembered her name. The girl was stoked that the princess was starting to trust her. She suddenly froze and looked the princess right in the eye. She just came right out and asked how she should address her. Darlene explained that it'd be weird if she just called her Your Majesty. The kid went rigid when she heard the words treason. Darlene said she couldn't exactly explain to everyone that she used to be a revered emperor. She saw the girl's negative reaction and decided to meet her halfway. The girl froze when the princess suddenly started talking about her eyes. She asked if she was talking to Ambernet or Daldalachosu right now. The girl was quick to explain that her name was Darlene Este. She also mentioned she gets memories in flashes, like through dreams. The princess listened intently to every word the girl said. Darlene said she's focused on living in the present now. Princess Yuel added that her past life doesn't matter anymore. That's why she thought searching for Darlene was pointless. The princess paused, her expression hardening, ready to drop a bomb. She looked at Darlene with dead seriousness, addressing her as Ambernay. Yuel said she considers him someone important in her life. Darlene froze, seeing her outstretched hands like she wanted a hug. She could practically feel the brave knight shedding a tear. Out of nowhere, the princess announced she'd be her new assistant in this life. Darlene was stoked, thinking she could hang out with her anytime. Yuel was floored that she wanted to serve her even now. Darlene was about to answer when she heard a familiar voice. They both turned and saw the second prince's face. He immediately gave them the stink eye and demanded to know what they were doing there. His voice was so icy it even froze the princess in her tracks. Darlene suddenly felt like she'd just been caught doing something she shouldn't. She was even more shocked when he asked if she was trying to cause the princess any trouble. After she said that, my respect for her took a nosedive. He didn't even acknowledge her, just kept right on coming. The princess ordered him to halt and chewed him out for acting like a total jerk. Darlene was about to burst with joy that someone finally had her back. Suddenly, she was smack dab in the middle of some serious family drama. He switched gears and asked where the knight sent to fetch her had gone. The princess proudly declared that she'd managed to ditch him. The prince told her not to brag about it and then asked what the lady was doing there. He was also pretty surprised at the rough shape they were both in. Darlene started to sheepishly explain, but he cut her off before she could get a word out. The princess declared, all high and mighty, that the lady was now her new protector. Darlene started freaking out that they might get the wrong idea about this. Yuel knew she had to stay hidden and let out a tired sigh. She crossed her arms and said she just needed a playmate, that's all. She decided to charm the grumpy brother, just like in some cheesy romance novel. He tried to hide his embarrassment and gave in to her little whim. Much to her dismay, he announced that he'd find her a play partner himself. The princess said that Darlene would be the perfect candidate for the job. She added that even though the lady seemed a bit clueless, she was still cute. The princess expected to hear a yes, even though the girl clearly wanted to bail. Finally, the prince ordered her to leave him alone with the young lady. Yuel didn't seem thrilled, but he threatened her father. After those words, she returned to the palace as fast as she could. So Darlene was left alone with the stern, unpleasant prince. He pointed out that she was still lying on the ground. The girl tried to get up, but accidentally tripped over a rock. The prince felt a pang of sympathy and said she always had to make things difficult. To her surprise, his favor towards her seemed to increase a little. He said he'd escort her to the entrance of the banquet hall to make up for his mistake. Darlene decided to play along and thanked him for it. Holding her was like trying to keep a helium balloon from floating away, which wasn't exactly romantic. He asked her how she'd even met his sister in the first place. She told him she was worried about her safety and followed her. Her story sounded kind of fishy, but he kept firing off questions. Darlene said she was getting flustered by him staring at her like that. She smiled, saying she always wanted a little sister. She added that all she had was a terrible older brother. The guy awkwardly wondered if all sisters felt that way about their brothers. Looks like Darlene managed to hit a nerve with the prince. She couldn't help but think he was like an adorable little kitten. The girl said she was nothing like her older brother. Even so, the princess looked exactly like the prince in every way. She upped her charm offensive with the prince, saying she and his sister were totally alike. Darlene got on a roll and started showering Yule with compliments. She went on and on about how similar their eyes were, forgetting they were different colors. The girl knew exactly how to work him, racking up those affection points. She kept embarrassing him with these ridiculous compliments and comparisons. Even when he pushed back, she kept boosting his favorability rating. She was stoked when she saw his affection score finally hit positive. So caught up in the moment, she didn't even realize she'd reached the palace gates. The prince just straight up asked why she hadn't greeted him. That question totally caught her off guard, because she still didn't know the proper way. She started shaking when he told her to make sure she did it next time. She mumbled an apology, not believing she could have spaced on something like that. Darlene lowered her head and tried to get the words out, the ones she'd been practicing. The prince said it was damn near impossible to hear even that basic greeting from her. Hearing that, Darlene realized things were about to get a whole lot harder for her. What made it even worse was that she still didn't even know his real name. She had to stay quiet, or she'd give away how clueless she was. Looks like the second prince wasn't backing down. He was really pushing for an answer. She practically jumped out of her skin when he said her name. The girl got so worked up her nose started bleeding again. The system warned her she'd burned through way too much stamina. She was about to pass out in like 30 seconds. The fairy told her to initiate a recovery period ASAP. She immediately apologized to the prince and said she had to go. Darlene tried to force a smile, even though her gloves were covered in blood. She made the second prince freak out when her body started to collapse. She figured he was super pissed because she hadn't greeted him properly. The girl knew she needed to find her brother, and fast. She braced herself to faint, but something felt off. Next thing she knew, she was in the second prince's arms, which apparently scored her some points with him. His current favorability rating? A whopping 1 point. She was totally blown away. She hadn't expected that reaction at all. The next morning, she woke up back at her family's estate. Her eyes snapped open like she'd just woken from a nightmare. It was like she'd been transported to another dimension overnight. She immediately doubted she'd made it home on her own. Becky's crying at the sight of her snapped her out of her thoughts. She immediately rushed in for a hug, babbling about how worried she'd been. The maid told Darlene she'd been out cold for a whole 2 days. The first thing she thought of was checking her stats in the window. She found out she'd gotten a reward for completing the quest. Her max health was registered at a whopping 27 points. She mentally cursed the system for being so damn petty. Darlene was surprised to see her brother's smiling face. She asked why the knight was waltzing into a ladies' room like that. He calmly replied he'd be more careful next time. Looks like Becky wasn't used to their weird banter. Paolo told her to thank Risa for the magic carriage. It's because of her that she got rushed back to the mansion and checked out. Darlene started racking her brain about it, 'cause she couldn't remember a thing. She couldn't shake this weird feeling, like she was missing something big. Out of the blue, Paolo asked her what was going on with her and the second prince. Everyone was blown away that he carried her, forgetting he never leaves a paper trail of his relationships. What he said helped her finally remember everything. She'd totally spaced that lichen brought her to Paolo. Darlene looked up, trying to recall any changes in her status window. The memory of him holding her flooded back. Paolo wasn't about to miss his chance to tease his sister. Darlene knew damn well a guy that good-looking was way out of her league. Out of the blue, she asked if any mail had arrived from the Imperial Palace. Paolo immediately started grilling her, asking if there was something going on between her and the Crown Prince. She just remembered that Lycan's promise should have already reached the Emperor. She needed to be appointed as the princess's gaming buddy ASAP. It was the only way she could get inside the palace. Right then and there, a maid visited her room with a letter. She calmly announced that a letter had arrived from the Emperor's family. Even mischievous Paolo seemed taken aback by the news. Only Darlene wore a victorious, satisfied smile. The next day, she responded to the invitation to the palace. She wanted to go alone, but Paolo volunteered to go with her. He tried to justify it by saying he was going to work, but that was a load of bull. The dude just threw his hands up and said he could do whatever he damn well pleased. He hurried to catch up with his sister and asked if she was all right. He thought her desire to play with a little girl was kind of weird. After another jab, she said she could smack him upside the head even in the palace. The moment she got the letter, she understood what the Emperor was worried about. She figured from the start she'd be called in for a chat. They were going to officially appoint her as the princess's playmate. This position was created to improve kids' social skills and emotional growth. We're talking about same-age friends, carefully selected from noble families. This letter rocked the entire Darlene family, who didn't even know about a second one. It contained orders to report to the emperor before meeting the princess. That was a surprise, since he seemed indifferent to the princess before. Paolo froze and said she'd have to go on ahead from here on out. He pointed to a massive staircase and just told her to head straight up. That staircase looked so gigantic, it gave her a real jolt. She didn't have any choice, so by the time she reached the top, she was drenched in sweat. A servant was already waiting for her in the courtyard, ready to escort her to the hall. The girl wondered to herself if the commoners really went through this every single day. She couldn't help but think it was all down to her being out of shape and lacking stamina. The only good thing was that she wouldn't have to come here often. Eventually, she found herself in the hall facing the emperor. The moment she saw the stern-looking man, her heart skipped a beat. There he sat, the tyrannical father from the novel she'd read before. This was Franz Conrad Wissen, a man in his prime. She didn't remember all the details, but she knew he was ruthless and dangerous. Darlene knew one thing for sure: this was not someone you wanted to cross. She bowed before such a high-ranking figure. The girl announced herself as a countess, greeting him aloud. Luckily for her, she wasn't required to formally greet the man. Only the empress was allowed to utter his royal name. He said his daughter took an interest in her and wanted to appoint her to something. Darlene replied that it was true, and a great honor. The emperor just coldly finalized their unspoken agreement. The girl hesitated when he ordered her to listen closely. She involuntarily remembered her brother's words, to be especially careful. Despite what everyone knew, he had a bad history with the princess. Darlene tried to find out why, but Paolo said she wouldn't understand. Rumor had it the princess tried to shank the emperor with a toy. Darlene immediately chimed in, saying she probably tried to do it with her pacifier. Paolo backed her up, saying she was aiming for the throat. To his surprise, the girl calmly suggested that it made sense. She couldn't help but remember that dark energy radiating from her. Even knowing the story, she had a hard time picturing a daughter doing something like that. It seemed weird since she had no reason to threaten her own father. Either way, she knew for a fact the princess was capable of it. Darlene remembered again that haughty look, full of disgust. The emperor started talking about how they usually pick kids the same age to play with. Darlene knew exactly where he was going with this, and guiltily looked away. The guy was suspicious that she'd still agree to it, even knowing all that. He confessed he'd asked her here to figure out if it was for real. In that moment, he really did remind her of a dad worried about his daughter. This felt weird from the start, because it wasn't like anything she knew. Even the second prince acted like he couldn't live without his sister. All these things just didn't add up with those low affection scores. She froze when the system pinged her about a hidden quest popping up. She was about to have one hell of a talk with the emperor. She knew she had to at least try, no matter what happened. A similar conflict was brewing with the emperor too. She had a bad feeling about what was about to go down and froze up. To her surprise, the guy said she could go into the princess's palace. Now she was constantly looking over her shoulder, feeling like she was in danger. The system said if she completed the quest, she'd get a one-of-a-kind perk. It'd let her hear only the truth when she asked questions. She wanted to bail, but the reward was just too damn tempting. Meanwhile, the second prince was in a similarly weird mood. He just silently watched the stern father and Darlene talking. I think he was surprised when the emperor declared that was all. Before leaving, the girl bravely asked for permission to ask him a question. The man didn't know what this girl was plotting now, but he gave his consent. Even the second prince himself didn't understand what she was getting at with all this. Darlene asked if she could visit Yuel every day and got his okay. The girl looked up and saw that there were only 2 minutes left until the end of the quest. She decided to take a chance and asked if he had any concerns about their age gap. Darlene suggested that maybe there was someone more suitable than her. The man calmly replied that she was the first person his daughter had chosen. At her own risk, Darlene asked what would happen if someone approached her with bad intentions. The emperor coldly replied that he should lose his head. He added, in a way that sent shivers down my spine, that this even applied to my gaming buddy, Joel. The guy saw how freaked out the girl was and asked if she had any more questions. The girl was terrified, but she knew there was no turning back now. She clenched the hem of her dress, feeling the clock ticking down. Darlene asked him to explain why the princess had chosen her specifically. His answer hinted that he wasn't as cold as he seemed in the story. Now she could hardly believe he was capable of hurting her. She bit her lip, knowing she was running out of time. She needed to figure out the evil emperor's true feelings. She was convinced that his hatred for the princess was a big smokescreen. Darlene said the girl seemed really mature for her age. She kept peppering him with questions, and he was giving honest answers. The girl was trying to get him to agree that Yoel was a wonderful kid. The guy wasn't budging, so she decided to cross the line. Even the second prince held his breath, waiting to see what she'd pull. Finally, she decided to ask a question he couldn't dodge. She straight up asked him if he had it in for the princess. It sounded so dumb and brazen, his eyes nearly popped out of his head. Even all his sons were in shock from such a sudden question. The moment he asked how that was even possible, the quest's effect wore off. Darlene recoiled, totally freaked out when she saw that chair flying right at her. Some crazy magic hit her instantly, like a total vacuum cleaner for everything in its path. Her health took a nosedive because of the massive mana drain. The guy figured she was trying to say the princess wasn't his kid. Darlene dropped to her knees, trying to swear up and down that wasn't true. Looks like the second prince finally got how messed up things were and decided to step in. He moved in front of the girl and addressed his royal dad. Darlene froze, not believing he was actually taking her side. She stared at his usual expression, like she was searching for some kind of answer. But it was no use. His eyes didn't offer even a glimmer of hope. Out of nowhere, he says, "I shouldn't be treating a lady like that." The guy goes on about how she's so weak, she can't even walk without getting sick. He also mentioned he saw something at the princess's birthday bash. Darlene was the only one who could get along with that spoiled princess. Guess that fact actually managed to dial down the stern emperor's rage a bit. The corners of his mouth drooped even further, like he didn't expect his son to talk back. After a short pause, he turned to Esther and ordered her to listen up. The girl stared straight ahead, waiting for his instructions. After what felt like forever, Darlene was finally free. She left the room lost in thought, feeling her legs about to give way. She thought she was a goner for sure after that showdown. She dropped her gaze, feeling all the tension built up inside her. It crossed her mind that she really could have kicked the bucket. It freaked her out to think what might have happened if the prince hadn't stepped in. Even though she was a mess, she still managed to nail that quest. That bumped up the emperor's favor by 50 points. Seeing her health bar go up too, she asked to see the emperor's affection level. After their last talk, she realized the emperor actually cared about his daughter. Darlene was slowly getting closer to figuring out what was behind all the drama. She figured the affection level she saw showed how the main character felt about her family. The girl was ticked off when the fairy complimented her quick thinking. She didn't get why the system hid everything, then dropped a quest like this. Darlene turned to the fairy and demanded the system start talking straight. She couldn't figure out what made the princess hate the guy so much. A servant greeted her and said he'd escort her to the princess. The girl agreed, figuring she should meet with the kid. After a while, she ended up back at the residence where she used to live. The house's interior was so amazing her jaw dropped. Darlene couldn't understand why the princess was living out in the sticks like this. The servant bowed and said he'd be waiting for her in the guest room. This place is a dump, she thought, looking around. Before she could even move, Yuel jumped out of nowhere. Scared the crap out of her, she totally ate it on the floor. The princess said she thought invaders were attacking. She was happy about the promise, saying she missed the ember net. Darlene was surprised when the princess ordered snacks. Hands on her hips, she addressed the only maid there. To her surprise, the maid reacted to her words with disgust. Darlene didn't understand what was going on with this maid's attitude. She was practically bad-mouthing a member of the royal family she served. Darlene instantly compared that to the dump Yuel was living in. It made her think the princess wasn't getting the care and attention she deserved. The princess noticed she was frozen and offered her a seat next to her. The girl also noticed how beat up the princess's clothes looked. Darlene decided to ask if it was workout gear or something. Yuel casually said she wears it every single day. That news just ticked the girl off even more. The princess didn't get why she was so surprised that she even slept in the same clothes. Darlene felt a genuine wave of horror and asked when the clothes get washed. The princess grinned slyly, called her a worrywart, and told her to chill out. She stood up tall and declared this was a cakewalk compared to the battlefield. Darlene tried to explain that she was just a little kid right now. She also ripped into the royal family for leaving her in this kind of situation. Now it finally hit her. This was like the start of some romance novel. It always started with the kid getting mistreated by the nannies and servants. She was the youngest daughter of a cold family who didn't give a damn about her. Still, unlike the original story, her dad and brother actually cared about her. That's what was throwing Darlene off the scent of the real mystery here. Meanwhile, the nasty maid just finished setting out some snacks. She slammed the tray down on the table like she was feeding dogs. Darlene was floored by her behavior and how fast she took off. The girl explained to the princess that the maid was being a real jerk. To her surprise, Yuel just burst out laughing at what she said. That reaction gave the lady a seriously bad feeling in her gut. She couldn't figure out why the princess, who used to be so demanding, was ignoring something like this. It didn't seem like Yuel would put up with that kind of treatment, not like in the story. Darlene thoughtfully bit into a cookie and suddenly froze. She instantly felt a violent tremor run through her entire body. The girl couldn't understand what was causing her body to react like this. She started coughing so hard it was like she'd swallowed something awful. Darlene noticed with disgust how salty the cookie was. Looks like the princess didn't share her surprise and thought it was normal. Darlene couldn't believe Yuel hadn't even noticed such a blatant insult. She immediately started analyzing everything she'd seen in this house. She remembered again the rudeness that the maid had shown. That woman was taking advantage of the princess in every way possible. It seemed way over the line, but the girl seemed okay with it. Yuel said it was just kids' stuff compared to what enemy troops do. Looks like that sentence was really eye-opening for Darlene. She suddenly realized it wasn't that the princess didn't notice or just put up with it. She just couldn't give a damn about attacks from other people. It seemed to her that this was exactly why the story wasn't moving forward. In every romance, the initial conflict has got to come to a head. In the original story, the tyrant and his daughter patched things up after the servant's misdeeds were exposed. Still, the princess's attitude towards these things made everything complicated. The emperor didn't notice anything because she was always coddling the staff. The second she thought about it, an idea popped into her head. She mentioned hearing some rumors about how she had a really awful nanny. The princess's mood immediately turned dark and sour. Darlene compared this to the abuse in the main novel. It wasn't just lies, it was straight-up physical abuse. Still, she hadn't seen the nanny who was calling the shots on all this crap. The princess smirked, all nasty, and said that person was gone. Darlene figured this princess didn't need any saving. Her past life as an emperor had seriously messed with her head. The girl guessed that was why she was such a jerk to her brothers and dad. Right after that thought, the system chimed in, praising her for being insightful. Now she had to dig up the real reason behind all this attitude. She gripped her dress, bracing herself to ask a loaded question. She turned to the princess and asked why she wouldn't just tell her father everything. Darlene hinted that she should have spoken up about the lack of control in her palace. She added that the emperor's totally clueless, basically. The girl explained that he's not the heartless dad he seems to be. She added that his attempts to look after the princess were obvious. She said she understood how hard it must be to adjust to a new family. Still, she hoped the princess could have a much better life than she does now. The princess wanted to snap back, but Darlene confessed she was just worried about her. After a short silence, she hopped off the chair and asked if she remembered her name. Darlene guessed she meant her true name, but Yuel hated it. She said that imperial names hold some kind of mysterious power. The girl claimed that this power was the reason her country was destroyed. That made it sound like she hates where she comes from. Seeing Darlene's surprise, the princess figured her memories were coming and going. She asked with disdain if she'd even forgotten her own homeland. The princess said she was the emperor of the Phelps Empire and was at war with Villainous. It was twisted that she was born in the enemy country that ruined her own. That's exactly why she can't bring herself to accept her family. The next day, Darlene visited the emperor's residence again. She respectfully greeted His Highness as befitting a noblewoman. The man listened to her greeting with boredom, waiting for it to end. Darlene still couldn't believe she was heading into the lion's den of her own free will. The emperor's gaze pierced right through her as he asked if she really wanted to see him. He said he'd have to reconsider her future if she came with some pointless request. The way he said that was so menacing, it sent shivers down her spine. Honestly, she wasn't exactly thrilled to be meeting with this tyrant either. Last night, she tore through the entire library looking for information about the Phelps Empire. It used to be powerful enough to control half the eastern continent. Roata brought it to its peak, but it all ended with his mysterious illness. Then this holy man showed up, claiming to have divine power sent straight from God. And just like that, with him as the first emperor, the new Villainous Empire was born. Villainous was gobbling up Phelps's territory with his power, and Roata could only watch it happen. His rebirth into the Villainous Empire felt like some kind of cosmic joke. So no surprise, he tried to take a swing at the emperor. All this crap just made a bad situation even worse. On top of everything else, she still couldn't shake the image of the emperor's grim face. Darlene brushed the thought aside, hoping the emperor cared about the princess. She was pretty much stuck with trusting him. That's why she came to ask about the princess's inner circle. Looks like he really didn't dig her question, judging by the look on his face. He figured she thought the princess needed to be shipped out of the palace. He added that she should reveal her true motives if she wanted to live. Darlene started explaining that that wasn't what she meant at all. She couldn't understand why he kept twisting her words. Finally, she told him about how the servants in the princess's residence treated her. She mentioned both the dismissive attitude and the awful food. They even had the nerve to leave needles in the princess's clothes. As soon as she finished, the emperor got even angrier. He fixed her with an intense stare and asked if there was a single lie in her story. The girl started shaking even harder, but insisted she wasn't lying. The man waved his hand and ordered all the guilty servants to be executed. His decision seemed so absolute, Darlene froze in surprise. She tried to stop him, knowing the princess would hate him even more. The guy asked if she wanted them to get away with it scot-free. He said keeping everything under wraps wouldn't be a big deal. Darlene hinted to him that the princess would find out sooner or later. Looks like her words actually made him think twice about his decision. The princess was the type who could fire as many servants as she pleased. It just goes to show she didn't think any of this was that important. Darlene tried to explain his own daughter's behavior to him. She straight up implied that a harsh punishment could push her away from her dad. The guy called her words bold, but he still listened. He got up and asked her why she was telling him all this. Looks like his sudden question caught Darlene off guard and made her think. He asked what her real angle was, considering she came to him. The second he brought it up, a new quest popped up behind her. She was thrown for a loop at first, but decided to take her shot. Darlene knew damn well nothing would change if she just kept her mouth shut. The girl started slow, talking about the princess's abilities. She had amazing intuition and a seriously sharp mind. Even so, the servants messed with her because they thought she was a helpless kid. Darlene stated firmly that this couldn't be allowed to continue. She also implied that the princess wasn't being protected enough by the adults around her. Most kids her age are shielded and supported by grown-ups. That's why they grow up without feeling so vulnerable and helpless. She added that the princess deserves that kind of security. She insisted on it, speaking as the adult who's currently closest to the girl. And that's exactly why she was ready to do everything in her power. She felt a surge of anger seeing how the system was being praised. Out of nowhere, she boosted the con artist's language skill, which might help in the debates. The emperor suddenly chimed in that she was acting more like a babysitter. He also said it was a better position for her. The guy just straight up announced she'd be her nanny from now on. Darlene managed to talk the tyrant into it and unlocked a new quest. She felt a jolt of fear realizing she could end up 6 feet under if she pissed off the emperor. He added that from here on out, she could speak her mind about what she wants. On top of that, he demanded she act accordingly. After that conversation, the second prince came to talk to his father. He explained that Darlene's family went broke trying to pay for her treatment. The man rolled his eyes when his father said he was bringing that up again. The second prince looked away, annoyed, like he was trying to put in a good word for her. He couldn't believe she'd show her face again after what happened yesterday. His eyes instantly picked out her slender fingers and delicate shoulders. He couldn't wrap his head around how such a fragile girl had the guts to do this. She was barely standing, but she still wasn't afraid to speak her mind to the emperor. He couldn't help but wonder if all this would only make her situation even worse. Meanwhile, Darlene was heading back to Yuel's residence. Like magic, everything was spotless and the servants were gone. The princess mentioned that knights had come by not long ago. Darlene tried to praise the emperor, but Yuel said she didn't care. Even so, her affection level for the tyrant still went up by 25 points. Darlene was stoked about the changes and was really hoping for success. Out of the blue, the princess said he looked just like the first emperor. Darlene cut her off, correcting her pronunciation of her name. Yuel repeated that he was a dead ringer for her old enemy. The girl immediately asked, surprised, if she'd actually seen the first emperor's face. She remembered that Roata was sick when the Visan Empire was founded, so she figured they'd never actually met face to face. The princess folded her arms and told how he showed up the day her castle fell. Even after all these centuries, she still couldn't forget his face. She hated him with every fiber of her being and wanted payback. She couldn't believe she'd be living with a guy who looked exactly like him. That just made her hate him even more. Just remembering that stuff made her want to lash out. Looks like the princess's little confession helped Darlene figure things out. That's exactly what she was stressing about the most before. She even got dizzy when she saw the first emperor's portrait. Their faces were so similar you could mistake the emperor for his reincarnation. Even she'd be freaked out if she were in that situation. She also saw a deep-seated resentment in the princess, years in the making. She knew anything she said would be pointless, but she wasn't giving up. It suddenly dawned on her that Yuel could actually do what she asked or suggested. So she decided to try her luck and flash the princess a smile. She announced that she could teach the princess a seriously important trick. Mentioning the payoff was all it took to instantly win the kid's trust. Stoked, she wasted no time starting to work her magic on Yuel. Darlene suggested she try touching her cheek with her finger. The princess immediately put her new nanny's advice to the test. The little girl looked so damn cute that even the nanny was blown away. She turned away, saying her heart couldn't handle that level of adorable. The girl mentally noted how easily the princess pulled it off. She kept staring at the girl, like she was running diagnostics on her. She couldn't help but wonder if the princess could ever go back to normal. It seemed like a long shot, but she still held out hope. Darlene felt like she was playing Yuel and decided to knock it off. It felt wrong, making the princess put on a cute show for these people. The system chimed in, saying sometimes overthinking things is a bad idea. Darlene jumped back, startled when something fell on her from the ceiling. She was shocked to see a rock plummeting straight for her head. The fairy immediately started warning her about danger nearby. Darlene recoiled in surprise when she saw the boy. The third prince was straight up hostile towards the isekai chick. She couldn't help but remember the original character descriptions. The third prince was basically an immature kid who hadn't learned how to socialize. At first, he just argued with the princess, but later he started looking out for her. Still, he definitely wasn't the type of brother to, throw shade. He noticed her confusion and rudely demanded to know who she was. His tone was so harsh, Darlene was actually taken aback. He called the princess a liar and pointed out that nobody was allowed in her palace. The kid added, all butthurt, that now she was a liar who'd gone back on her word. He angrily shut his eyes and started calling the girl some nasty names. Looks like his sass finally got under the little lady's skin. She told him she ordered him to leave her alone when he's bored. Her snappy comeback sparked a full-blown argument between them. The prince shot back, saying he learned it all from watching her act up. The system dinged them, saying the romance is straying too far from the script and docked her health points. That's what made Darlene blow up at the kids and break it up. Eventually, she managed to separate them and calm them down. The prince asked again who she was, but the princess told him to back off. She repeated that she ordered him to stay away, which really ticked him off. He kept insisting on his right to visit her, but it was no use. The princess got serious and asked if he was ready to face the music now. The kid saw a bright light and asked why she hated his guts so much. Darlene suddenly realized she finally understood the whole deal. She remembered the princess had a major beef with this kid. Her strength was only matched by the animosity she felt for her father. The third prince was small and kinda clumsy when he tried to explain himself. It was obvious that Emperor Rote, stuck in the princess's body, wasn't thrilled about it. Darlene suddenly spotted a single flower crushed under his foot. It suddenly hit her that fixing this might be easier than she thought. She got a new quest, which involved having a tea party with the kids. Nailing that challenge got him a 5-point boost in her affection. She got pissed when the fairy geared up to answer the newbie's questions. It seemed fishy to her, since the fairy never just spilled the important beans. She knew they wouldn't tell her anything until she figured it out herself. She got chills when she realized she could kick the bucket if she missed a key clue. She didn't know what the fairy was ultimately after, but she was out of options. Darlene turned to the kids and told them to knock it off with the squabbling. The prince immediately called the nanny a real piece of work and asked why they even hired her. That really stung the already insecure girl's feelings. The princess cursed again and told him to shut his trap. All that trash talking she did actually made Darlene sick. The girl dropped to her knees, telling him he'd dropped his flower. The kid went beet red when she asked if he was going to give it to the princess. The princess was surprised when she saw Darlene hand it over to her. She whispered that he's just a kid, even if he is annoying. The girl calmly added that kids are different from adults. Just like that, she managed to get the princess to warm up to the prince she didn't like. She called Darlene too soft, which wasn't like her at all. The girl decided to seize the moment and suggested they have a tea party. Looks like her suggestion actually managed to surprise those little hellions. They agreed, which meant Darlene could finally finish the quest. In that peaceful vibe, they had no clue about the bad guys lurking. Their orders were to grab the princess, dead or alive. Their faces were hidden by cloaks, and their minds were full of nasty plans. Meanwhile, Darlene was trying to lighten the mood with small talk about the weather. Unlike her, the kids were still keeping it super quiet and tense. Even though they weren't thrilled with the plan, Darlene managed to make it work for her. Luckily for her, the system finally boosted her already pathetic health points. She was bummed and surprised that she was trying so hard, but still wasn't getting healthier. Darlene tried offering cookies, but the prince just cursed again. He scowled when she threatened to kick him away from the table. Darlene caught herself real quick and said the princess would be the one to do it. The little girl played along with her nanny, telling him not to curse. After a little bit of begging, the prince finally asked for a serving of cookies. Darlene warned him that some of those cookies were salty trick cookies. That's how she decided to mess with the fussy kids. Looks like she didn't get around to dealing with the nasty surprise left by the old servants. These were the very same cookies the servants had loaded up with salt. Yuel saw her chance to tease him and asked if he was scared. The prince immediately protested, saying he just didn't feel like eating. He got all huffy and called her weird, totally missing the point of why it was funny. The princess shot back, calling him a shrimp with barely any hair on his head. Darlene was surprised when he pointed out she was giving him the longest reply ever. He baited her, asking if she was actually talking asterisk to asterisk him right now. The princess asked what else it could possibly be if not a conversation. Out of nowhere, Darlene got a notification that the romance was getting closer to the source material. So, without even trying, she managed to boost her health bar. She still couldn't wrap her head around how this messed up system worked. The prince suddenly stood up and asked if she was actually enjoying this. I don't think the princess initially understood exactly what he meant by that. The prince picked up the teacup, like he was talking asterisk about asterisk it, you know? Darling finally caught on that he was talking about the cracks in the mugs. He was thrown by the fact she used old clothes and chipped dishes. He almost wondered if he should just go ahead and wreck the presents. He asked if that was why she even moved into this dump. Seriously, did he really think the princess was into rundown places? When she didn't say anything, he said his father was right all along. He repeated, like he was thinking out loud, that she really did love old stuff. The kid gave the girl's nanny another suspicious look. He confidently started grilling her about her family and what she did for a living. Darlene gave an awkward smile and told him where she was from. Her last name jogged his memory. Her family takes care of the greenhouse. He suddenly stepped closer, pointing out her unusual hair color. He said he'd never seen such a vibrant pink before. Darlene was used to her look and didn't really get what the big deal was. The prince picked up his cup and asked if he could spill a little. After that, the tea somehow turned into magical energy. The two girls froze, totally confused about what he was really up to. It all happened so fast, Darlene didn't even have time to react. The princess immediately saw it as a threat and jumped to respond. She instantly whipped out her pacifier, unleashing her full power. Without hesitation, that little girl jumped right up on the table. The prince recoiled, seeing the air crackle with her lightning. She pointed her weapon forward, ordering him to stop picking on the regular guy. The prince had to back down, rolling his eyes in frustration. The princess looked back and saw Darlene, clearly spooked by the kid's squabble. Yuel got her drift immediately and explained that the boy was a mage. The girl couldn't wrap her head around how such a little kid could be a mage. The prince tried to get under her skin, but she decided to put him in his place again. Darlene could tell things were escalating and tried to say she was fine. The second she said that, the prince's hostility towards her spiked. He pointed a finger at her and demanded to know what she'd done with his sister. He couldn't wrap his head around why the princess was defending a stranger so fiercely. The prince threw his hands up, saying that he was her family. He blurted it out so openly and innocently, it took him a second to realize what he'd said. The moment he started thinking about it, his cheeks flushed red. Things got even more awkward when Darlene made a hasty exit, leaving them alone. She told them not to fight, then bolted out of the room. Once she was alone, she figured they needed to hash things out themselves. He was certain the third prince was also developing feelings for the girl. My family figured Yuel wanted to live here because she was just into old, busted-up places. That's what happens when you never give a damn about anyone, ever. Darlene had come to terms with only seeing what was right in front of her face. Even so, she did know a few things about the princess. In stories like this, kids use their tricks just to stay alive. Still, the princess was a little different, though. Even though Roata was reborn in enemy territory, he ain't looking for revenge. It seemed to her like he was stuck reliving his past life. Darlene got the feeling he was trying to just coast as Yuel Rabbit Vyson. That's why the stories just stalled out and going nowhere. Darlene showing up was the only thing that ever changed her story. She even managed to get rid of those creep servants. Walking down the path, she couldn't help but wonder when it got so deserted around here. It suddenly struck her. Why weren't there any knights guarding the palace? Now she understood why she'd been so on edge. That night, she acted like someone whose life was constantly on the line. Little did she know, the princess really was asterisk on her own. Darlene froze as soon as she heard a weird rustling sound. She asked sarcastically, "Who in their right mind would order a hit on the Empire's princess?" The girl was sure she was wrong, until she spotted a shadow. The shadow operative said he'd never heard of the kid having a governess or a nanny before. Darlene didn't even have time to blink before she was surrounded. The guys were talking all ominous about how they were gonna do what they originally planned. Right then, a quest popped up, telling her she had to either fight her way out or make a run for it. Even the fairy told her to bail, like she couldn't see the girl was boxed in. Darlene froze, totally shocked when she heard a voice she recognized. It was that Ambernate knight, the one who offered to lend her a hand. His phantom gently squeezed her palm, like he was sharing his power with her. The next thing she knew, she'd opened up a dialogue with his soul. And out of nowhere, that bright magic flame shot out from her eye again. The mercenaries were caught off guard when they saw the girl using magic. They immediately drew their blades, but her attack deflected them. Darlene didn't do anything directly again, but her skills had improved. Now she could tap into the power of the possessing soul, using her own health points as fuel. The mercenaries thought she was a swordswoman who used mana. Meanwhile, Darlene only had a minute left to deal with them. She suddenly realized that her body wasn't moving on its own anymore, like it had before. She figured she wouldn't be able to take them all on directly. That's why she focused her power into the porcelain teapot. The girl tensed her muscles and swung the teapot at them. Her move was so powerful they felt the pain instantly. Darlene kept her footing and saw how brightly he was glowing. She leaped back and unleashed a final devastating blow. The mercenaries tried to attack, but she deflected their strikes in a flash. Outnumbering her like that, they swarmed her like flies on garbage. She landed another hit, saying she didn't even want to look at them. She only had 15 seconds left, and failure blindsided her. Suddenly, she felt a jolt of pain shoot through her whole body. One of the mercs revealed his face, adding that this was the end of the line. This was the moment when Darlene was in real serious trouble. She collapsed onto the ground, exhausted and feeling another wave of nausea. The guy who attacked her moved in close, looking real menacing. He sneered, saying there was no way he could let her live. Darlene thought it was game over, but then the princess jumped in and attacked him. Like something out of a movie, she stood tall and told him he was full of it. Darlene was so shocked to see her, she totally forgot about feeling sick. The princess spotted the last mercenary, but the prince took him out. The kid yelled out, saying that guy had scared him half to death. Finally, all the mercenaries were down and they were safe, for now. Completing the quest gave Darlene a health boost. The prince was instantly intrigued by Este after she went on the offensive. The princess ordered everyone to leave her alone, saying she looked injured. The third prince suddenly noticed something weird about the mercenaries' clothes. The princess didn't take him seriously and told him to get lost. Finally, it clicked. He realized they were hired killers. That's what made Darlene remember they were *** a novel. The main character kept the attack a secret, afraid of family judgment. Her thoughts were interrupted by a system alert that she was about to pass out. The prince and princess kept bickering about the mercenaries. Looks like UL didn't want the prince to know about the hired guns. The kid couldn't believe his ears when she said they came here often. He immediately wondered why they were targeting the princess. The girl just said she would have figured it out a long time ago if she knew. They started arguing even harder, but Darling couldn't get involved. She didn't even know if she could get out of the princess's palace in 30 seconds. The princess smiled and said she managed to save her subordinate this time. Her warm smile brought Darling back to the night's memories. She felt again that the Embernate was emotionally moved by her ruler's words. Darling quickly thanked the kids for their heroic rescue. She decided to smooth things over between them with some gentle praise. The prince complimented her back, but her time was tragically running out. Right away, the princess noticed she was starting to feel really bad. The prince guessed she might have been hit by a sword, since he didn't know about her situation. The little girl saw blood coming from Darlene's nose and totally freaked out. She started mixing up her past life with what was happening now, begging the Embernate not to leave her. This kept the romance from being too predictable, and Darlene's health went downhill even faster. She wanted to calm the girl down, but her strength was just draining away. The girl wanted to say something, anything, but she couldn't even stand up. The world was a blur, then the second prince's shout cut through it all. Darlene turned her head and barely recognized the second prince. She couldn't help but wonder if she was just tripping balls. The last thing on her mind was taking care of the princess. Next thing she knew, she woke up in the freaking palace. The system chimed in, saying UL's affection for the second prince just jumped up by 50 points. She also noticed she was super close to finishing the main quest. The girl tried to look around and saw the second prince standing right there. She immediately jumped out of bed and tried to give him a proper greeting. He stopped Darlene and asked how she was feeling. He was thrown off by how questioning her tone was when she answered. He added that a healing mage took care of her, which helped her recover. Darlene instantly remembered waking up in a daze, like days later last time. Unlike that time, she was back on her feet in just a couple of hours. Realizing that, she rushed to thank the prince for healing her up. I guess her gratitude kinda caught him off guard. He practically bolted out of the room, and then she asked if she could go home. First, he called her weird, but then he asked her to come see him again. Coming from the ice-cold prince, those words seemed so unbelievable she froze. He saw her reaction and said his sister had asked him to pass that message along. Darlene immediately asked if the princess was all right now. The second prince said thoughtfully that he'd never seen her that scared before. That just goes to show how much she genuinely cared about her nanny. He remembered how she kept checking up on him the whole way there. The prince told her he had a good grip on him and she could head back to the palace. The princess said, all worried, that she was going with them. She changed her mind when he said her slow pace might delay the treatment. The third prince was explaining his statement until he heard that he had short legs too. And just like that, the grown-up prince managed to shake off the two kids. The princess felt awful that Darlene got hurt protecting her. She threatened the second prince that his reputation would be toast. UL was trying anything to get him to bring Darlene around. She was floored when he said all she had to do was ask for his help. He casually added that she was his sister, and he hoped he could be there for her someday. UL never even imagined she'd hear something like that from a guy. She turned away, flustered, and said sternly that he was a good egg. In the end, the girl agreed to go back home. She smiled and asked him to pass on those exact words to Darlene after she recovered. It seemed like it was the first time the brothers had seen her care about someone so much. The second prince hated to say something like that to a lady, but he couldn't refuse. He just thought about what a one-of-a-kind kid Ul Rabbit Vison was. Everything about her was surprising, including her unique way of talking. And get this, her divine powers awakened super early, blew everyone away. Still, she kept everyone at arm's length, family included. That's why even her little brother thought she straight up hated them all. Their tyrant dad figured, whatever, just give her what she wants. Didn't even try to connect. After all this time, the second prince just figured that's how it would always be. But then Darlene came along and somehow earned the princess's trust. For the first time ever, Ul opened her heart to someone who wasn't even family. It was some random lady he'd only known for like a week. That's exactly why he didn't trust her from the jump. Even now, he's still scratching his head trying to figure out why. Still, it made him happy seeing the princess start to change for the better. The next day, the princess was over the moon. She complimented the girl on her willpower, which helped her recover. As soon as Darlene mentioned the prince's help, Ul called him a decent guy. She added that if it weren't for the girl, she wouldn't have even known about it. Darlene wanted to check her progress window when Ul thanked her. The next moment, the girl glanced at her current progress. The second she saw the improved relationship score, a thought popped into her head. She wondered if this was really the right way to go about things. She didn't get why Ul had to act all nice just to get closer to these people. Darlene figured the brothers and the emperor should be the ones bending over backward for her asterisk. From the jump, she needed to flip their whole perception of the princes and the emperor. She was dead certain those guys would be stuck in their old ways forever if she hadn't shown up. It was pretty clear Rabbit wasn't trying to hear any of this reality. All she wanted was to cut herself off from it for good. Deep down, the kid just wanted to stay trapped in her old life. But her new life had already started, and Ul had to get involved. She could only finish the quest after Rowata was ready to live as Rabbit. Her life needed to be full of laughs and good times, not just being alone. That's why Darlene was making a point to spend as much time with her as she could. The princess wasn't exactly thrilled about the picnic idea at first. She figured that was kid stuff, even though she was a kid herself. Darlene kept begging her to go, saying she was craving some treats and wanted to hang out. She started throwing out all kinds of compromises, trying to find something the girl would like. The princess seemed pretty surprised by her weird pose, I guess. The girl explained she was trying to persuade her, but the princess wasn't budging. Out of nowhere, she decided Darlene was asking about it to see if it would work on the prince asterisk. The princess was thinking Darlene was on the hunt for a husband. She tried to pawn off the crown prince on her, even though Darlene had never even spoken to him. The second Ul even thought about the other prince, she immediately said Darlene's taste was interesting. Even the princess thought her brother looked way too icy. Darlene started arguing that guys that handsome are totally in right now. She also made sure to add that she wasn't looking at him romantically. Imagine her surprise when the girl said her brother was actually pretty interested. She yelled out in shock, saying there's no way that could be true. Darlene couldn't let a romance with the second prince even begin. She decided to get back to the topic of entertainment and suggested something else. Ul tried to refuse, but the girl immediately begged her to reconsider. At first, the princess addressed her like a commoner, but then she corrected herself. She smirked and said the girl was seriously weird. The girl admitted she hadn't thought about it, but she'd take her advice. The second she mentioned a possible option, a creepy vibe filled the air. Darlene was surprised when she said she wanted a sword. The princess proudly declared that sometimes she misses the thrill of battle. She could barely get the words out when she talked about fighting and bloodshed. The girl spoke about it with such enthusiasm that Darlene felt uneasy. She said thoughtfully that she couldn't exactly arrange a war for her. The girl said she knew that, but she still wanted a sword. She wanted so many of them, enough to fill the whole room. Darlene wasn't even sure if granting that wish would be the right thing to do. Just 10 minutes ago, she had no idea they'd turn her own tactics against her. The princess looked so damn cute, you just couldn't say no to her. Darlene froze, trying to process what she was seeing. Finally, she screamed loud enough to shake the whole damn house that she'd collect every sword in the world. That very day, she summoned the chamberlain from the Western District, the guy who managed the palaces. Darlene expected him to bring swords, but his hands were empty. The guy asked, all stiff and formal, what exactly they were supposed to bring. She immediately picked up on the disrespect in his tone. He was acting like he had no clue why all the maids had been given the boot recently. Darlene couldn't help but think he was just like them. She figured he was just some 2-bit punk you find in chapter 1 of any dime store novel. The girl smirked, deciding she wasn't going to let it slide that easily. She stated firmly that she'd summoned him to bring the swords. She asked if anyone had taught him to question the orders of those he served. He replied that he wasn't authorized to bring dangerous items into the residence. The guy doubted the princess would ask for something like that of her own accord. No sooner had he said that than the girl whipped out her pacifier of doom. Darlene rushed to calm her down, telling her to trust her on this. She asked if he even knew who she was, daring to show such disrespect. The guy scoffed, reminding her she was just some playmate. Darlene laid it out. She's got authority on par with royalty. That news hit the guy so hard he almost lost his balance. She just smiled and told him he could go check it out with the emperor himself. It was like she knew he'd chicken out and wouldn't dare try something like that. He bolted out of the room, saying he'd carry out their orders. The princess gave her props, calling her a rabbit with some serious bite. Just 30 minutes later, they had a dozen different swords laid out in front of them. Princess Rabbit was tearing around the room, totally stoked, like she couldn't get enough. The size of the swords didn't slow her down one bit. She was loving it. The kid said Darlene just didn't get how awesome this sword was. It was obvious the girl didn't share her enthusiasm, but the princess's excitement made her happy. She never expected to hear such important words in the end. The little girl confessed she was overjoyed and then sincerely thanked her. It was so touching that tears welled up in Darlene's eyes. Their happy moment was cut short when the third prince barged into the residence. He burst into the room and said he'd overheard something weird. Turns out he'd snuck in through the window instead of the front door. He noticed Darlene was there, but she called him out on his behavior too. He asked what would happen if the princess mistook her for some kind of troublemaker. The kid crossed his arms and said he'd think about it next time. He saw a whole pile of weapons and asked if she was gearing up for war. Darlene smirked and said it was Her Highness the Princess's request. She gave the kid a good look and asked if it was pretty. He clearly wasn't feeling it, so he decided to play along. Darlene teased and told the girl that her brother liked those swords too. And just like that, she managed to boost Yuel's affection level. Her smile vanished when the third prince called out to her. He demanded she repeat what she called his sister a second ago. As soon as she said the girl's name, he asked her to do the same for him. The prince said his name was Noah and insisted she call him by it too. Darlene could barely handle him being so familiar with her. The prince ordered her to call him by his first name too, just like Yuel. He whispered that if he got closer to Darlene, he could get closer to her sister as well. The second she agreed, she realized the princess had heard everything. Noah said he should call her by her first name too, and called her Lalin. Guess he didn't know that Yuel had been butchering her name this whole time. Darlene said her name and added that she's been wondering about it herself. Noah thought it was a cute nickname and said he'd call her that too. Darlene tried to explain that wasn't the case, but the kids weren't listening to her. After that, Noah tried again to get her to help him spend more time with his sister. He swore he'd protect her fragile self in exchange for it. The kid was really laying it on thick, trying to look good in her eyes. Darlene felt a sting when he downplayed her fight with the mercenaries. He dramatically compared her to a baby canary just hatched. Noah accidentally let slip about the favor he was hiding from Rabbit. Darlene quickly covered for him, saying he just wanted to be called by his first name. The princess was skeptical, thinking protection was too high a price. Looks like she managed to catch her off guard and get under her skin. He said Darlene was super weak. Even his canary was tougher than her. He was stoked when the princess actually agreed with him. Looks like gossiping helped them bond, and she even admitted she had a crush on him. Noah claimed he respected the weak, but that was a load of bull. He'd say anything to get in the princess's good graces. Noah was floored when she called him the ideal knight of the future. She even said he was a decent guy, which is like high praise coming from her. The prince didn't see her feelings changing, but he could definitely feel it. Eventually, they actually went on that picnic together. The kids were just teasing each other nonstop, like a real family would. By the end of their outing, Noah even braided a flower crown for her. She appreciated the gesture, but the crown ended up on his head anyway. Darlene was seeing for the first time just how chill things were between them. She couldn't stop smiling, watching them get along so well. They played around for so long, they even crashed out together, totally peaceful. So, by the end of the day, they'd actually managed to bond a little. On the way back to the palace, they asked if she really had to leave. Darlene thought maybe she should stick around a bit longer, but that wasn't the deal. The princess said the nanny was supposed to be around all day, but she was heading home. Darlene replied, thinking out loud, that it was all because she wasn't in the best shape. She added that her parents were just super worried about her, that's all. She wanted to offer her another nanny, but the princess didn't want anyone else. The kid called herself a saint and just let it go. Noah, all flustered, asked if she was scared to sleep alone, but she just told him to get lost. While listening to the childish bickering, Darlene caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. The second prince was watching them, lost in thought. He greeted them with his usual poker face, like always. Darlene started to say hello, but he told her to stop right there. She took that as her cue and decided to bail while she still could. To her surprise, he said he'd walk with her. The princess immediately praised him and ordered him to escort the nanny like a proper gentleman. Looks like Yuel's definitely trying to hook up the girl with her brother. He tried to correct her, figuring she'd meant to call him a gentleman. She totally shut Darlene down, saying there were other possibilities. Ultimately, she still ended up in a pretty awkward spot. The second prince stepped forward and said he'd ordered a carriage readied. Darlene awkwardly asked if he'd come all this way because of her. He immediately nailed her with a look and asked if there was a problem with that. He reassured her preemptively, saying he hadn't had to wait long. The prince decided to explain the promise he'd made to her sister while she was out of it. Back then, he promised to station a night at her residence. She was surprised, remembering she was only 9 points away from the required affection level. Darlene stopped, lost in thought about what had just happened between them. The second prince said it was all thanks to her. Rabbit said she wouldn't have even talked to him if it wasn't for Darlene. He rightly pointed out that without her, he wouldn't have gotten anywhere near his sister. She was floored when he added that he wouldn't have been able to become a knight. Turns out, he decided he'd become the knight his sister asked for. Darlene gritted her teeth, mentally calling him a creep. Then it suddenly hit her. He'd been eavesdropping on all her talks with Rabbit. Pure horror flashed across her face. The second prince anticipated her thoughts and said he couldn't have heard their conversations. He added that even then, it was clear she was way more genuine than she let on. The guy said she was just as honest as she'd told His Majesty that day. He couldn't help but remember her standing before the Emperor back then. She confidently promised to do everything in her power to make Yuel happy. The second prince didn't get why she was so set on living for the kid instead of herself. Her fate was sealed because of her poor health, but she still made that choice. Throughout their acquaintance, she always showed her best side. The prince vowed to sort out the feelings he used to have. That phrase echoed in his head, sparking new thoughts. He couldn't help but recall how outrageous she was back in the greenhouse. Still, he figured he might have jumped the gun that day. He went red and asked me to forget what he'd said. Right after that, the system dinged, saying a new romantic fantasy route was now available. A new day dawned, and Darlene woke up to her maid grumbling. She begged for 10 more minutes, even though she'd asked to be woken up way earlier. Suddenly, she noticed Yuel's affection level for the prince had shot past 90. So the world was finally getting closer to the original story. She blurted out she had to get to the palace, but Paolo stopped her. He greeted her with a smile as she woke up, noticing how anxious she was. She immediately asked if he'd been waiting to walk to work together. He immediately handed her the letter from Lady Trish, delivered yesterday. Paolo added that the lady was upset about how rarely they see each other. The girl realized instantly that it had been a while since she'd seen her. She knew it wasn't cool to treat her like that. Darlene couldn't help but wonder why her brother had the letter. He said he ran into Rise when she came by while she was out. That was so out of left field. Darlene felt a little awkward. She suddenly noticed her bracelet give off a single flash. She saw Paolo's sly grin and wasn't sure if she was imagining things. Right after that, she hurried to meet with the princess. And right away, she started chewing her out for moving around so much. The princess was going on about her delicate health and how she needed to take it easy. After a while, Darlene decided to find out what went down between her and the prince. The princess wasn't about to spill all the beans, so she started way back when the girl suspiciously said, kinda quiet, that they'd seen each other that morning. Out of nowhere, she crossed her arms and said she wasn't telling her anything. Darlene tried to change her mind, but she wouldn't budge. She also found out that all the swords had been removed from the residence with the princess's permission. Turns out her second brother helped her with that, and he also promised to switch out the staff. That included that stuck-up chamberlain who was arguing with them earlier. Besides that, her personal maid and servants were due to arrive any minute. Darlene was stoked that the second prince went to so much trouble. During their conversation, she found out he had to take some kind of aptitude test. Apparently, the royal family has to show off their skills once a month. Rabbit took it once, and that's how they found out about her power. That was also the day she, expressed her displeasure to the Emperor with her pacifier. Even though she didn't succeed, it didn't seem like she regretted it one bit. After that, he stopped summoning her, saying she wasn't ready yet. Darlene decided to find out how they actually discovered her power. The little girl said she first felt the power of Visin in the temple. Darlene instantly remembered that detail from the original story. The whole deal with the temple was the main conflict in the novel. She decided to fish for details, acting surprised. I didn't even know their was a temple here. Decades ago, a saint was brutally taken out, and the temple's power stopped leaking out. Right then, Darlene started putting 2 and 2 together. Usually, the bad guys in these novels are connected to the temple or the royal family. She'd figured that out after reading a ton of these stories. And considering the main character is an archduke from the royal family, she started suspecting a potential connection to the temple. Darlene was trying to figure out why someone kept trying to snatch Yoel. This could mean the temple was trying to restore its holy power. She looked like nothing more than a kid, mistreated by her family. Darlene clenched her fist, feeling angry on behalf of the little girl. She turned around, unexpectedly meeting a strange man. He immediately moved toward the princess, greeting her. The man gave a sinister smile and asked if she remembered him. Darlene instantly sensed a threat from this guy. Looks like the princess didn't recognize this mysterious stranger either. He smirked crookedly and, after apologizing, said he was late with introductions. He bowed, calling himself one of the 5 high priests. The second he called himself Rondo, the 3rd servant of Lord Ibaton. The princess's face just dropped. She straight up said she didn't know anyone by that name. The kid froze like she was hit by a truck, but she still kept running her mouth. This guy was definitely hiding something. You could see it in that smirk of his. Darlene stepped in front of the girl and told him he had no business being there. She introduced herself as the nanny and said he was only getting 1 warning. She ordered him to leave before the knight showed up. He gave this creepy smile when she asked if he had permission. The guy said there's no place that God's influence can't reach. He declared, all dramatic, that he was sent by God to serve the princess. Darlene was furious at his cocky and arrogant attitude. The system just popped up with a notification about a new quest. She had to resolve a conflict with some nobody villain. She had to simultaneously foil his plans and keep him alive. No way she was supposed to protect the life of a villain! Darlene decided she'd just toss him out herself and turned to the knight. After that, she felt the power of the ember net surging through her body. The priest kept trying to lure the princess to the temple with his smooth talk. He thought he could reel her in with promises of a comfy bed and new clothes. The guy even went on about delicious meals, thinking she was living in poverty. Darlene said she wasn't just gonna sit there and take it from him. He just called her a puppet, sent by the emperor. He added that there was no other reason to use someone who was about to kick the bucket. The priest reached out to the girl, but Darlene slapped his hand away. She told him to watch his freaking mouth. The guy immediately took offense, saying she better not talk to him like that. He started threatening her with retribution, but she was already on the offensive. She grabbed a branch and rushed to attack the arrogant priest with it. The guy was stunned that some nanny knew magic. She expertly went after him, determined to take him down in a minute. She came at him like she was swinging a sword, not some twig. Darlene was caught off guard seeing that shield pop up around him. The dude immediately started bragging about his holy God-given power. Darlene felt her sword's energy just slam into a brick wall. She was like, wait, what? When she heard she needed to awaken the power of destruction, Embernay said the Phelps family had been teaching it for generations. It was forged by a demonic beast and could even shatter divine power. It was like the princess was reading her mind. She ordered everyone to rally. Sounds like her shout snapped the girl out of it and got her ready to fight. She managed to unlock her soul's abilities and seriously level up her skills. So that's how she unlocked the Embernay's destructive power. Darlene, filled with newfound resolve, charged back at the villain. She managed to crack his shield and sent him flying back a few yards. The guy was floored by that kind of raw power. It really messed him up. Darlene finally let out a breath as he hit the floor with a thud. The princess admitted she'd missed that forgotten destructive force. She watched with admiration as her magical nanny protected her. Darlene decided to finish what she started and approached him again. All his cockiness was gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated fear. Darlene jumped back and pointed at his necklace with alarm. 1 second he was there, the next, his body was toast, like he'd gone full kamikaze. The noise instantly grabbed the crown prince's attention. He confessed he almost couldn't resist coming here. He grinned, saying the heavens finally heard him and gave him a reason to show up. Darlene immediately started to greet him, but he cut her off. He called her worthy of respect since his sister chose her. Compared to the rest of the family, the crown prince was a total looker with a gentle vibe. Even so, he still had a pretty icy demeanor. Originally, he felt like a real puppet master when it came to Yule's enemies, but now he was standing in front of them, his hands clasped together in prayer. He asked if his sister wanted to say hi to her little bro. Darlene thought he was the textbook definition of an older brother. She looked down and saw blood dripping from her nose again. The second prince said she gets new wounds every time they meet. The girl immediately shut him down, saying the princess was fine. She added that she perfectly protected Yuel, but that wasn't what worried him. He wanted to explain what he meant, but he couldn't get the words out. Darlene noticed the rewards given for completing the quest. She was stoked to see a new skill that boosted her personal insight. According to the message, she'll have to find hidden pieces in the future. She was so lost in thought, she totally forgot about the guy she was with. He got her attention and was like, "Hey, are you even listening to me?" After she said something else, he asked, "Seriously, don't you care about your own well-being?" Darlene was surprised. She wasn't expecting him to ask that. Looks like the prince realized he'd kinda revealed his concern a little too much. He turned away, saying, "We need to stop that bleeding." They stumbled upon Yuel trying to shake off his clingy brother. The princess suddenly brought up what he'd said about them not seeing each other. She turned to the second prince, but he immediately said he couldn't answer. He knew instantly she wanted to know what his brother meant by those words. Darlene couldn't help but wonder if they also had a reason for not seeing Rabbit. She immediately started connecting the dots about the princess who'd become one of them. The prince's words were bugging her too. The ones about them not being allowed to meet. On top of that, the second prince was giving off major hiding something vibes. She figured that's probably why the cliches got all messed up. Still, something about the whole thing just didn't add up. She asked to see Yuel's affection level towards the heir apparent. Judging by the score, she almost thought their relationship was pretty decent. She tried to step in, telling them that you just can't threaten the brothers. Looks like their little chat made the crown prince pretty happy. He smirked and said there was just no way he could believe it. Seeing Darlene's stress, he told her to chill out. The crown prince playfully admitted he was even a little jealous. He decided to leave and told Yuel he'd be tied up today. The guy dropped down and grabbed the priest by his robes. He said with menace that he needed to take out the trash. The second prince asked him to go on ahead, saying he'd catch up. The crown prince immediately guessed he wanted to be LL's favorite brother. He jokingly threatened to load him up with extra duties and work. The second prince agreed to anything, just to get his brother to leave. This dude thought he could trick him, but even taxes didn't scare him off. Finally, he gave up and left, dragging the lifeless body behind him. The princess crossed her arms, all business, and asked him to spill the tea. The second prince shot back, all serious, that she'd have to pay up for it. He demanded she name one of his asterisk weaknesses in exchange for the info. The second prince decided to name his price, telling her to call him bro. The princess immediately shut that down, not giving him a snowball's chance. He instantly called her out for making a promise and then bailing on it. Rabbit knew he was messing with her pride, but she still called him bro. It sounded so weird coming from her that his cheeks turned bright red. Darlene looked at the guy and said his happy face was just gorgeous. He was so stunned, he didn't even react to what she said. Darlene realized what she'd just blurted out and figured she was gonna get it. She started backpedaling, trying to prove she didn't have any ulterior motives. After his question, she went way over the top, saying she had zero feelings for him. But even though she said that, her voice told a completely different story. She immediately apologized for her inappropriate compliment. The guy awkwardly replied that he heard stuff like that all the time, so it didn't bother him. His words instantly cheered up the worried Darlene. The princess wearily watched this awkward conversation between two clueless people. She felt like they'd gotten off on the completely wrong foot. Trying to lighten the mood, she asked him why he was sticking around. He was stoked that she called him bro again. The guy said he was here for treatment, but the doc hadn't shown up yet. The girl perked up when he suggested heading back to his place. He just smiled coolly, soaking up the praise from his little sis. The second prince saw his chance and smoothly scooped her up in his arms. The princess was floored by his unbelievable nerve. He asked if she seriously planned on walking all the way to his palace. The guy was playing her like a fiddle, using her pet peeves against her. He decided to put his foot down, saying he could just ditch her and leave with the lady. The second he said something like that, she totally freaked out. She ordered him to hold her tight and gave him special permission. Her playful reaction brought a knowing smile to the prince's face. After a while, they ended up at the palace, where he bandaged the lady's hand. She thanked him for his care, but he just threw her earlier rudeness back in her face. He said he hoped she wouldn't pull any more boneheaded moves. Darlene agreed and apologized for all the trouble she caused. The princess suddenly chimed in, saying the problem was how he was talking to her. She smiled and told him to be honest about how worried he was about Darlene. He denied saying it, but she just laughed at how red his face got. Meanwhile, Darlene was racking her brain about what to do next. She still had 2 more characters from the main quest to deal with. She knew she absolutely had to get some intel on the crown prince. Even though he seemed like a simpleton, she knew he could be dangerous. She knew she shouldn't rush into getting close to him. The girl decided to cut off the brother and sister to ask a question. The prince said, looking flustered, that he'd try to answer her personal question honestly. Darlene shattered his expectations and asked about the crown prince's personality. The second prince expected her to ask about him, not his brother. She wanted to know specifically what kind of guy he was. The prince immediately got defensive, saying his family info was classified. Darlene got scared and reminded him he promised to answer a question. She was also tripped out by the notification that her insight skill activated. The princess just straight up asked if she had a thing for that jerk. She started thinking out loud about which of her brothers she liked more. The princess was totally shameless, suggesting she was into both of them. She told her not to be embarrassed, adding that everyone goes through it at her age. She completely ignored Darlene's attempts to explain. The girl kept asking which of her brothers she should give to her. They ended up talking for a long time. Darlene promised to come back tomorrow, and the prince offered to escort her. The princess boldly told them to stay put, then told the nanny to leave him and get lost. She added that she and her brother had some serious business to discuss. The prince clearly had no idea what she wanted to talk about in private. Darlene asked him why he'd been staring at her subordinate all day. He was even more surprised to hear her ask what he planned to do. She kept grilling the guy about his intentions toward her nanny. The second prince tried to justify himself by saying he was thinking about the priest. He started talking about how someone in the palace could help him out. The princess immediately figured he suspected Darlene. The prince stood up and said he trusted the lady asterisk she asterisk trusted. Still, from an outsider's point of view, she did seem kinda sus. He almost said other people might think the same, but he caught himself. He couldn't help but think about that other guy who was with them. Little did they know, he was actually watching over Lady Este. The guy shot her a death glare and slipped into the carriage.